Today is moving day. Moving day number 2. It's safe to say that I'm truly gonna miss this awesome campsite. We're ready to explore more, see what else is out there, see what lies ahead, if you will. What's happening? I'm Will.
I'm Christy.
And this is Pumbaa Dog.
After years of overlanding across the United States, we decided to hang up normalcy and move full-time into 𝐿𝐼𝐺, our 21-foot travel trailer.
Our goal is to set up base camp in different regions of the U.S. and explore the areas around us. We invite you to join us as we share our adventures of full-time living. To kind of give you guys an idea, doing a little prep here for moving day. Christy likes to start off with a ceremonial spilling of the coffee beans on the ground. Pumbaa Dog is, as you can see, he's diligently helping. Now, one thing is I'll pull this up, and when we pull the slide in, I'll actually take that off because the futon itself weighs 90 pounds. I don't know how much the base weighs, but just a little bit easier on the slide, I feel like, if I take that off. Back here in the back, we put the TV back up against the wall. We drove from South Carolina to Tennessee with it like that, so I think we should be good to go up towards Knoxville, which is where we're headed now, which is about an hour away. Going down. Note to self for future reference. Be aware of black widows. Yikes. 2 other spiders and other insects down there that he's killed. She, he, it. Got a slug living over here. Lord of mercy. Got a whole damn ecosystem in our jacks here. The addle-leaf did seem to help though. It doesn't seem to be as squatted. As a matter of fact, the front of the trailer actually looks as if it might be pointed up a little bit. So yeah, I'd say they help. Pro tip, whenever you're putting this away, make sure you hold it upside down and shake it so you can get the rest of the power out. Well, we're all hooked up with nowhere to be for like 4 hours.
4 hours?
Yeah, where'd you say, what time is it?
It's 10 o'clock.
What time can we check in?
Starts at 12. 2
hours? Hour-long drive, Pumbaa. What do you say we go to the old Awful Waffle? You want some Awful Waffle?
I want some coffee.
You want some Awful Waffle? Don't mind if I do. Probably one of the most important things that you can do before you head out is check the pressures in your tires and make sure that they are where they need to be, because that is the key to keeping these things healthy. Here's the logistics. Logistics is Christy drives Apple behind Austin and 𝐿𝐼𝐺, and we'll head out. I tell you, we really need walkie-talkies. That's gonna be a must for the future, especially whenever we go on these long travels like out west. But yeah, man, off to the second place. For those that might be wondering how the Tundra Pools, let me give you a rundown first. The trailer is fully loaded with all of our belongings. The back of the Tundra is also loaded down with the generator and 5 gallons of gas. And I put that addle-leaf on there. And the addle-leaf does make a big difference as far as how the truck squats, or lack of squat rather. What I will say though is with the addle-leaf, I've felt the trailer a little bit more, I guess because it's probably a stiffer suspension. But as far as how the Tundra pulls, man, pulls like a dream. As a matter of fact, whenever I was getting onto the interstate at first, I was actually passing the people that were in front of me getting on the interstate, and they were accelerating at the same time. So, super impressed with the way the Tundra pulls. Now, the downside to that, though, is still gas mileage. But you know what? I think that you're going to have that problem no matter what. I think that even if we had a diesel, we would have bad fuel mileage. You know, semi-trucks only get like 8 to 9 miles to the gallon, so it is what it is in a lot of cases. But other than that, man, the Tundra pulls just fine. Up and down the mountains, just fine. It's loud sometimes whenever it does it. A lot of that has to do with the boiler exhaust, but it pulls just fine. I'm very impressed with it. New digs. We're creekside, sort of, again, just like we were last time. It's not near as pretty as the last one, but hey, it's a creek nonetheless. I will say that the little spot here is far more level than the last one was. Got a lot more room. So this is always the fun part about pulling up to your new spot. All of your things will be a little bit jostled. Just a tad bit jostled. Most importantly though, the reason that we moved here, that right there. When you're working from inside the RV, you kind of have to have connectivity. And well, we've got some here. Back with yet again another renovation. More repairs than renovation. So basically what's happened here is the sink started leaking, and then I found out that there was a big gap in between here and the sink. So I took the sink out, tried to clean it all back up and put it back in, but then I found that the water has gotten here and caused it to be unlevel. It's just poor countertop material, really, is all it is. So I gotta fix that. But I wanted you to notice, look at the drawers. They're literally held in by staples. The fact that they mass produce these things and sell a bunch of them is just astonishing to me. Just because the lack of quality in them. It's really crazy, but it's what we're left to deal with. I mean, what can we expect for $35,000? All right, so that's the end result. I had to redo this, and I redid it to where this is sitting down into the sinkhole, and then I braced it on the bottom there with some spacer boards. What I'm gonna eventually have to do is actually redo the entire countertop, which won't be too bad of a deal because I'll be able to make a little desk area for Christy, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. And ultimately, we've only had this thing a year, so I shouldn't have to do it, but it is what it is. But anyway, the sink's in. I've laid some caulking around it. You can kind of see the reflection a little bit. Not caulking, but some silicone to keep the leaks out, and hopefully we don't have any more problems out of this bad boy. Only thing that does kind of suck is now we don't have a place to stick our cutting board. But then whenever I look at the fact that, man, that thing was barely hanging on, it's kind of like, huh, are we really missing out? Wouldn't you know, we have more water issues with our 2019 Grand Designs Imagine 2150 RB. So while jacking it up earlier today to get it re-leveled because it seemed like it had sank, I noticed a good bit of water. You can see where it's wet there. I noticed a good bit of water come pouring out from the underbelly all back in here, and it's been just steadily dripping right here. So I've got to take out this underbelly here so I can figure out exactly what's going on and where the leaks are. Now, for the most part, this is going to be pretty cut and dry. 10mm screws all the way through, and there's a whole bunch of them. Look at this piece of factory gold right here, huh? How do you like that? Just some clear tape taping up the wire connections here. Pretty legit, right? I've got this down a little bit, and you can see there's definitely water up underneath here, but I can't see as to where it's coming from. And it does appear to be a tank right there. I just don't know which tank that is. I would guess it's probably one of the gray tanks. So that's the water. It appears to be clean water, but yeah, I just got to finish taking this thing off in order to find out really where it's at. I don't know how well you can see, but there's no insulation. It's literally just empty spots. No insulation at all. The reason that that's so concerning is because, oh well, took it off. There was a sticker that came right there that said something about Arctic insulation. Finally got that piece down, and now I'm able to inspect it. What I did was I just cut it right along the center there, and I'll end up taping that back, but basically the reason that I cut it is to make this accessible in multiple different places. This back area is one of the places that I needed it accessible, so now I've got it accessible back here. This thin piece of foil is Grand Design's idea of Arctic insulation. I think that this is probably what's leaking when we're actually backfilling the black tank as we're dumping. It's the only thing I can think of. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace this and dry everything up and keep the cover off, and then do a full flush and all and see if that fixes it. I hate these clamps. I've taken the hose clamp off and I've put one of these on, and I've had good luck out of these so far. And I went to a plumbing supply store. That's what they told me to use underneath the sink. So apparently that's what you're supposed to use on the rubber hose. I accidentally gouged up a little bit of the trailer while I was doing it, but now that we got that fixed, we can go ahead and finish up our off-grid solar install. So the very first part that we have to hook up before we can get any of the stuff going into the coach itself is actually what I like to call the brain board. Everything's going to be mounted onto brain board, including the fuses, the bus bars, the switches, and the multi-plus itself. So basically the way that this works is the sun goes into the solar, then goes into the MPPT, then goes into the batteries that are up underneath the bed. From there, the batteries go into the multi-plus. This is the brains of the operation. The multi-plus then goes back into the 120 and 12 volt side or circuit breaker of the coach itself, and it converts the batteries into the 120 volt, just like you're plugged up into shore power. Then the shore power that's existing has to come out from there and then go into this, so that way it can charge the batteries when we're plugged into shore power. That's a lot. We'll explain it further when we get to that step, but the very first thing we have to do is put everything onto this board. And the idea behind this is if I ever have a problem, I can take this board out and then work on it on a table just like I have it set up here today. All right, so I think I have it about figured out. So positive goes from the batteries back here into the fuse. Fuse into switch. Switch into positive bus bar. Positive bus bar into switch. Switch into multi-plus. Now, pretend this is black wire. This is going to be the negative. Batteries into shunt. Shunt into negative bar, bus bar. Negative bus bar into multi-plus. Solar. Positive and negative goes into solar charge controller. Positive goes into fuse, then goes into positive bus bar, and negative goes into negative bus bar. I think that's it. I think that's how it's got to work. Now we need to go inside and find out how to put this wire from the batteries into our board here, saving as much as possible, because as you can see, I only got, I guess, about 5 foot of this, so we're gonna be cutting it close. Oh, and then this will have residential style wiring going back up into here for the shore power and for the AC box, but we'll figure that part out later when we get ready. Right now, again, we're just putting together the brain board thing. All right, so right inside here, this is where the batteries are, which is actually up underneath the bed of the coach in the back bedroom here. And as you can see, I've drilled the 2 holes to get the wires to come out. Now I'm gonna go outside and measure how high up they are. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use as little wire as possible. That way I can maximize the 5 foot of each color that I have. So if my calculations are correct, this will be where the positive wire comes in, this will be where the negative wire comes in. All right, so test fit successful. So as you can see, I got both the holes there. The positive is going to run out of that into the fuse, from the fuse to the switch, over to that terminal, which is the positive terminal, and then come all the way down to this switch and then go into the multi-plus. The negative is going to come in on that side, go to the shunt, from the shunt to the negative block, and then go into the multi-plus. Right in that empty spot down there is where the MPPT is going to be located, and we'll get that set up later after I get everything else wired. That is the secondary part of this entire system, so I'm not going to worry about it right this second. But for now, I've got to go get 22 1-inch screws and looks like 8 2-inch screws for the switches. The next stage of the project includes me getting a beard and hair trim, as well as making sure that we've got enough wire, crimping up all the wire to the right size, and kind of hooking everything up. Now, I've gone ahead and crimped one of the wires. I didn't want to do my very first crimp on camera just in case I messed it up, but I'd say it turned out pretty good. Basically, I got to do this for every single connection, and I've got to cut down the length of wire down to the proper length. We've got a couple different tools. First and foremost, we got a cable cutter. These are 28-inch cable cutters here. I've got 5 foot of, I think they call it number 4, but it's basically, it's welding wire. I'll put the description down on the end there. And I've got both black and I've got red, so obviously for power and negative. The crimper is this hydraulic crimper here. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you have at least one of these in order to make sure that you got a good solid crimp connection on there. Last thing you want is a loose crimp connection. And then I've got marine heat shrink. This is going to go around that connection, make sure that it's nice and sealed up. So these are basic tools that we're going to have. Now let's move over to the brain board and figure out what links we're going to need. So now I have all the connections made. I've got everything laid out onto the board the way it needs to be. I've cut everything, I've hydraulically crimped everything, and then I even heat shrinked everything. This is marine grade heat shrink. It's probably not the prettiest job. You might have been able to do better, but hey, it's working, it's sealed, and that's the way that it's supposed to be. I need to get some sort of plastic covers to go over my power blocks there, and I still haven't figured out permanent locations for the solar controller and the breaker for the solar controller. And the reason is because I know that the positive and the negative need to go to it, but I don't know if I want to move this shunt over here, because this is where the negative is going to come in from the batteries, positive is going to come in from the battery here and connect to there. So I don't know if I need to move over the shunt over to here, so we'll see once I get it all done. The next part of this project is where it gets tricky. Now I've got to figure out a way to take 2 solar panels, connect them into one wire, run the wire down to the MPPT, and then through the boxes in order to ultimately get it to go into the Victron so it can charge up the batteries. Now also I've got to take the shore power that is currently ran on the RV that goes from the plug in the back to the distribution block underneath the TV, and then converts the power behind that to go to the onboard battery. We're totally disconnecting the onboard battery that's the current 12-volt system, and we're replacing it with all of this right here. Good thing is Kurt's going to come over. He's a licensed electrician. He's going to be the one showing us how to hook all that up, and he's going to make sense of it all for us. My only job is to take 60 foot of wire here and cut it down to the correct lengths. Let's go ahead and get started. I would think that it goes without saying, but make sure that before you start messing with any of this stuff that, well, you unhook the power, right? The last thing you want is a trip to the ER. All right, this is the onboard distribution panel is what they call it, and this particular one is a power converter with distribution panel. This looks very similar to what you have inside your house, and it is on this side. The left side is going to be for your shore power or AC or 120 or whatever you want to call it. On the right side you have your 12-volt power. This is for that battery that's up at the front of the camper. Whenever you're not hooked up to shore power, everything that's running is running off of this side, which is the 12-volt, and when you're hooked up to shore power, all of it's running at the same time, and the way that they do that is with that power converter that they talk about having. Right now the way that it works is the shore power goes into that power converter, which then powers up this side and this side. We're going to eliminate that power converter and we're going to redirect the power. We need to power this entire thing off of the batteries and off of the solar, but I still want to be able to use shore power as well. So I've got to run the wire from the shore power plug all the way to the Victron, from the Victron into this thing here. The Victron is going to tell it when to do 12 volt, and it's also going to tell it when to do AC, and it's going to do it all off of the batteries that we have installed up underneath the bed when they're connected on their own, or it's going to do it from the shore power. Whenever the shore power is connected, the Victron makes that determination. But the first thing I need to find out is how long of a wire I need to run from this to the Victron, and then from the shore power to the Victron. Let's go ahead and pull this thing out so we can find out what we're working with. All right, so you can see here with the cover off, it gets a little bit more complex. I can't stress this enough. Make sure that you are totally disconnected from shore power. You do not want to be messing with this stuff whenever it's connected to shore power. This down here is that power converter. This is what makes the distinction between AC and DC and makes it all run. Don't mind that sound that you hear. That's actually Christy taking the underbelly off so that way we can get to it, so that way we can run these wires. So the next thing I have to do is take this thing and try to figure out where the main power comes into it from. That way I can connect to that point with the Victron Multiplus. As far as the 12 volt side is concerned, I think that I actually may be able to use the same connections that are already there. Just instead of wiring it to the battery where it is now, I'll wire it directly to the Victron Multiplus. Okay, now it's starting to get more and more complex. As you see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different wires going to the AC side here. Looks like we got one wire here, and then we've got all kinds of different wires coming from this side. Now, keep in mind this is the distribution block. So our job right now is to find out what the wire is that comes through. Now, if I go back here in the back and look underneath where the bathtub is, which is the wire that runs to the shore power, that's an orange wire. So I would assume that this orange wire is the one coming from the shore power. But you know what they say about assuming. Take a look down here though where they have everything grounded out, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. So the job I have right now is to feed the wire that I've got from here to the Victron Multiplus up front. All right, so what I've had to do here was I actually took this access panel off, ran the wire up from the bottom through this hole that was already there, back behind that, and if you remember, this is where the Victron Multiplus will be. So I'm gonna end up with two wires that look identical running from the power distribution block, so I'm gonna mark them. The first one is gonna be marked with the zip tie, that way I don't get them confused. Kurt's over here, and he's tripping out that both Christy and I are working. You thought she was just gonna be laid up eating grapes?
Yeah.
With the dog?
With the whip saying, come on, man, what are you doing? I can't believe you
She's
got that
underneath
beautiful
there.
lady up under there doing
She's
that.
working. She's ready to roll, brother. Are you even qualified to do this?
No.
Not at all?
I've never seen a wire till today.
Really?
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, you're an electrician. By
Licensed in the state of Georgia, yeah,
all that
blah,
good
blah,
stuff.
blah. Yep.
Yeah. He knows a little bit about what's going on. One thing that we did that's kind of different than some of the others is we used a little bit of a different wire. We used this SJ00 wire, which is a pretty easy wire to find. And we used that
You got the
instead of...
multi-strand, so you can use it 12 volt or 120. So it's all-purpose wire. Something you'd use like on the like on your drill cord or something. So it's really hefty duty. Being underneath, you don't want any chafing and problems out of it. So same stuff I ran in the van.
Gotcha.
So it's been excellent.
And we're basically hooking it up the same way that your van's hooked up too. I've pretty much built this entire system off of his advice on what all we need to do. So right now, your goal is we're gonna run shore power into the Victron, right?
Right, so this came from the plug outside your shore power, and then we're gonna hook this wire to it, and then that's gonna take your 110 over to the Victron.
Yep.
And then we have this second wire that will run through, and then the 120 will come back and hook into here. So that will charge the batteries, and it's smart enough to know if
Figure
you're
all
hooked up,
that out whenever it needs to.
Exactly. And then you were telling me that you have these two wires go up to that little battery up front that everybody has. So now you'll disconnect those up there, hook those into your 12 volt system on the bar.
On the Victron deal.
Yep, and now you
on the power bar.
On the power bar.
Okay.
Now you got the 3 batteries now. You got three 100 amp hour lithium batteries to run your lights and stuff on.
Yeah.
So
and then the Victron will invert the power from those 3 batteries to AC power. So that way we can run this. And we've got to trick up our sleeve so that way we can run the AC and all that, but we'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
The first thing we have to do though in this box specifically is we have to bypass that power converter, right?
Yeah, it's gone. So it was hooked up here, breaker's off. Even if there's a breaker and it's off, just for people that, you know, just in case somebody comes in here and wants to turn it on, I just disconnect everything. Yeah. So it's still in here. We didn't take anything. You can put it back the way it is, put it that way. And then so you can turn this back on. It won't hurt nothing. And yeah, we're going to wire this up through the Victron and
be ready to roll.
Be good.
Off grid.
Off grid.
And we'll be able to convert it back.
Yeah, and you got the solar.
Yeah, so the solar we're going to do as well, but that all goes into the power board. So none of that's going to go into here. Basically, we just need to wire these brains into the other brains in the back, and then it's going to figure it out. Yeah. And that's the beauty of getting that Victron, really.
So this is the line in from shore power. This is the first wire we ran.
Okay.
This is the one I still need to get the wire nuts in the box and make that.
That's the one we marked.
Yep.
Okay,
the one you marked. And then the second one's here, so this sends it back out into the panel.
Makes sense. It's marked AC in and AC out. I was able to reroute the red and the white wire from the stock 12 volt system and then get them pumping here. So we're ready to roll. We're good. We got 12 volt and we got 120. We're ready to go. I got lights on in here. I've got, yeah, of course. I've got the ACs working, the microwave's working, the TV's working, all this shit's working, and we ain't plugged in. Here she is, the completed project. Now, I'll end up cleaning up these wires and doing some stuff like that. I'm also going to come up with some kind of cover idea to kind of encapsulate all of that, but that's it for right now, and it's running good, I might add. So as far as how I wired the solar panels, I decided that I would use a non-permanent solution. So basically, whenever we get up to wherever we're going to be camped out for a while, I'll run the cord down and then under where the water access is, and then into the power board there. And I just connected those up with some Y connectors, MC4 Y connectors, and I'll leave a link down in the description. The wire I used was this SJOO wire, and you can actually pick this up from Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. It's 10 gauge wire. It's perfect for this. It does come with 3 strands because it is household, but you're just going to use the 2 strands. I use the black and the white there, and yeah, man, it's wired up and it's running. It's looking good. Now that we have the off-grid setup completed, it's time to button up the underbelly before our next big move. One thing I did to the underbelly while it was off was attach Reflectix to it to give it just a little bit more insulation than that thin piece of film that it had from the factory. I used this stuff to replace the foam that was kind of in there already, and let me tell you something about this stuff. This stuff here, if you get it on your hands, it ain't coming off. Like, seriously. I've got it all over my hands from kind of putting it up there, and it's not really the best for this job. You need something that expands more, I think. Something more like what comes from the factory, you know? Nonetheless, we got the bottom buttoned up. We got it sealed up as good as it is gonna be for right now. We'll hope for the best. Hopefully that does us for a while. Moving day. So we're fixing to go to South Carolina from Tennessee, which is where we're at now. We're gonna spend some time there on the holidays and be with family. Then we're going all the way out to Texas. The final step to this entire project that I have to get us off grid is to install the Easy Start for the AC. And as you can see, I've already taken off the cover. So what I'm hooking up is a device that basically manipulates this thing some kind of way. You'll have to look up how, but it essentially makes it use a whole lot less energy than it normally would. These things are complete energy hogs. And you know, it blows my mind that they haven't set these RVs up to be a little bit more energy efficient, but most of all to be able to be off grid from the factory. But it is what it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that installed. There's tons of different videos online. I'll leave a link down below to one of my favorite ones on how to get this thing installed. So I'm not gonna go through all the details of how to get it installed. There's great wiring diagrams. Like I said, there's tons of videos out there, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm gonna go ahead and hook it up, and then I'll show you guys the result. Man, that was way super simple. So check this out. Completely unplugged. So currently on the battery, we're sitting at 68%. As you can see, the draw is 67 watts. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn this on to cool low. It's coming on. You can see it pumping up. 1200, 15, 1240, 1260, 1299, 1320. And then it'll kind of even out around 1200 to 1300. This thing is running, baby. And on high, we're running at somewhere around 1300, 1350 watts. As you can see down here, I could run like this for 2 hours with the AC on high, just off a battery. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Even if I didn't have just the battery set up, if I just was running off of a generator, that would be a very good mod to have, that Easy Start or whatever it's called there. And man, what a difference it makes. I wish that I could show you guys what that thing ran you know, without the Easy Start, but I can't. It actually will not run at all on the Victron alone. That's how much juice it, so it's pulling over 3,000 watts. I don't know how many it was doing. That is an energy hog. Now, as you can see, the Easy Start on, I can run the AC just off the batteries alone for 2 hours. dope. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Full Time Living. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of it. You guys keep hanging in there like a hair on a biscuit. And remember, you can be happy if you've a mind to. Peace, y'all.